A co-founder and CEO of Chapter, which is a healthcare company focusing on the 60 million plus Americans retiring at the age of 65 and above.
We're working on helping a lot of people. I think we're one of the most misunderstood companies around, maybe even more misunderstood than Palantir at this point. It's true that no one knows what it does, or very few people know what it does.
Your co-founder was Vivek Ramaswamy. You had Peter Thiel involved, in the company. Now Vice President JD Vance involved with the company back in his investor days. I am guessing the company had enough steam. Why do you think it was hard to fundraise?
Healthcare and Medicare are weird, esoteric markets. Medicare is kind of the redheaded stepchild of healthcare. Healthcare is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the US economy. We're not a healthcare company. That's like the first misconception. VCs have this concept of like founder market fit. It's totally bullshit.
How would you define a tech-enabled service business?
Software has become relatively easy to build. If software is not defensible, then what is? Certainly tech-enabled services are the only defensible business. So if you think that transparent, consumer-oriented, better technology, better incentives, better user experience win in antiquated industries that have consequential decisions for people's health and finances, then it's pretty easy to see why Chapter will win.
Cobi Blumenfeld-Gantz, welcome to We the Builders.
Thanks for having me.
You're the founder and co-founder and CEO of Chapter, which is a healthcare company focusing on the 60 million plus Americans retiring at the age of 65 and above, which is probably 25% of the country, going to be probably 35% of the country, right, in a decade or so, which I knew it was a big market, but on my train right here, I did some math and I just realized Chapter is going to make a lot of money.
We're working on helping a lot of people.
And you're like, I did not realize. So help me break down, besides, being MAGA labeled, what are some misconceptions about Chapter and what is it that you do? Right. And your background is you spent some time with Palantir as well. And, you had experience working in bureaucratic systems, but this is Medicare's probably on another level.
I think we're one of the most misunderstood companies around, maybe even more misunderstood than Palantir at this point. Certainly we're not at Palantir's stage.
Well, why is that?
I think it's a bunch of things. One is healthcare and Medicare are weird, esoteric markets. Medicare is kind of the redheaded stepchild of healthcare. Healthcare is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the US economy. So there are just very few people who actually understand what's going on. Our approach to Medicare is quite different than anyone else's. And so that also creates a lot of confusion. And the first component is we're not a healthcare company. That's like the first misconception. We're very much a data company or a retirement company, not a healthcare company at all. And so it's just a very poorly understood segment.
Can you share more about the problem? As if, there are 10-year-olds listening to this and they have most people, right? I think most of the audience is younger entrepreneurs or investors. And maybe they don't have parents who are in the aging category yet, or who who are retiring. So I think most people are unaware of the acute problem aging people in the country face. So maybe you can share a little bit more on that.
There's the proximate acute problem of how do people optimize their Medicare plans and get on the right plan at the right time that fully covers their needs at the lowest possible cost. And then there's the broader problem of how do people live with purpose and security in what is becoming a longer and longer chapter of their lives, retirement. So on the first part, when you turn 65 or retire in this country, you are forced to deal with Medicare in some way. Unlike when you and I sign up for health insurance through our employer, maybe we have 2 or 3 or 4 options if we're lucky, and it's usually all from one insurance carrier. And in most cases, we have an HR department that we can call for help. When you are a senior dealing with Medicare for the first time, you have hundreds of options, not 2 or 3, and you have no HR department to call for help. And the consequences of choosing an incorrect Medicare plan are both money. You can be spending thousands of dollars more than you need to, and health. There was a study by a Yale health economist a few years ago that showed that choosing a suboptimal Medicare plan led to a 20% higher mortality rate relative to choosing a good Medicare plan for your needs. And so there's very real financial and health consequences to this decision. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of different incentives and different profit motivations in the market with insurance carriers and brokers and lots of different sort of marketing middlemen. So it's very difficult as a layperson, even as not a layperson, even as an expert, to navigate this system. One very simple example is there was a Stanford health economist who was on a podcast a couple of years ago who was talking about our broken healthcare system in this country, and he made an ad hoc aside that, by the way, I have no idea how to choose the right Medicare plan. This is a Stanford health economist who doesn't understand this. And so how are any of us going to understand it?
What is the problem there? You say that you have access to probably hundreds of different providers through Medicare. And I guess this could have been a separate conversation altogether for maybe the second time you're on why there's a 20% mortality rate with like the wrong providers. But why is it that people who have access to the best resources in the world, like maybe some of these Stanford professors or access to the best technologists, what is the core of the problem?
I think there's two core problems. One is a data problem. There is no single list of every Medicare plan with all of the associated components of that plan. And so that could be the doctors that are in network, the prescriptions that are covered at a given cost, the benefits like hearing, dental, vision, over-the-counter goods. And so that's one area. There's just no list. Even the government doesn't have a fully consolidated, correct list.
Right.
The second problem is incentives. Really no one is incentivized to be transparent and to help the consumer. Most Medicare brokers, really all Medicare brokers except Chapter, are agents of an insurance carrier. They are trying to create revenue for an insurance carrier. That's how they set up themselves up. That's how they account for their revenue. Right. That's just how their entire incentive is structured. At Chapter, we are totally inverted. We focus exclusively on how do we help consumers. But we're soon we'll be the largest Medicare guidance platform in the country. We're not quite there yet. And
it's still $1 billion company.
We're making some progress, but there's a lot more people we can help that we aren't helping today.
How many people, you started 2020, how many patients have you like onboarded since then? Is it like a membership platform? And do you have both sort of AI assistants that are able to help and, actual team members? Or I went through the website, there's like probably hundreds of experts there that you can get in touch with on different issues. Is it like a combination of both?
Yes. So we started in 2020. The first year or two, we were really figuring out the problem space, understanding what it was. I didn't come from healthcare. I worked at Palantir for a long time. So understand how to use data systems and how to make those data systems accessible and usable by people. But really no one on our team, even today, except for our Medicare advisors.
Would you say that's an advantage?
I think so. I'm always...
But that's an incredible story, by the way. And I want more entrepreneurs to hear this, that, you can have nothing to do with a category.
I think the idea, like VCs have this concept of like founder market fit. It's totally bullshit.
Yeah.
First of all, you can craft a story that makes it sound like you're a good fit for anything, which is valuable. Like people need to be able to tell good stories.
This is going to be a great clip.
Yeah. People do need to be able to tell good stories, and it's important.
Yeah.
But I think founder market fit is a function. I'd say it's bullshit in the way that VCs think about it.
Right.
It's real in the sense that you do have to deeply care about a problem and you have to be able to solve it.
Right.
But that's not a function of did you come from that industry.
Oh yeah.
Which is what a lot of people think about when they say founder market fit, which is why I say it's largely bullshit.
Yeah.
But Chapter really is a data company at our core. We're the only company in the space that really takes a data-driven approach and tries to solve core data issues. And so from that sense, I do have a lot of experience in learning how to use data.
Because you're at Palantir.
Yeah.
But I won't claim to know what Palantir does because, like many people on Twitter, since, we'll come back to the Chapter conversation. But what does Palantir do? And what was your role there? And what's translated from Palantir to Chapter?
It's so funny how misunderstood Palantir
Have you seen that meme that, nobody knows what Palantir really does? Is it like a consulting company? Is it?
It's true that no one knows what it does, or very few people know what it does, which it's just hilarious because they're actually one of the more transparent companies relative to most others, really, which is why it's just weird. But it's very simple. Palantir builds software that helps large organizations deal with their data. It's very simple.
Okay.
And so that's taking a lot of different data sets from a lot of different systems, integrating them, normalizing them, and then making use of that data. That's what they do.
So it's AI before AI.
That's one way of saying it. It's
In
AI
a sense, right?
with AI.
ML has been around for a while.
ML has been around for a long time, but it's even simpler than that. A lot of the value that Palantir provides to its customers is making it easy to integrate different data systems, whether you have spreadsheets or documents or legacy CRMs, whatever it is, into one platform. So people of different skill sets.
Central source of company memory in a sense.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you for, I think this is going to solve a lot of problems on Twitter. We finally understand what Palantir does. It's a data company.
Trying.
Okay. And what was your role at Palantir?
I was on the U.S. government team. So I focused on helping U.S. government customers use Palantir software, configuring the software so that it was useful for the relevant workflows. And Palantir's weird in that, or at least it used to be more weird in this way, but not very many titles, pretty flat, a lot of autonomy. So I did everything from BD and sales to product configuration to data modeling work to training users, embedding with users all over the country and all over the world. A lot of different things.
Were you doing DIY videos on the weekends and then deploying on weekdays?
I did not do DIY videos very often. On occasion for our users, they certainly weren't on the public internet. But I did spend a lot of time making sure Palantir's users could use the software effectively.
If you had to think about three major ways in which that experience transformed like the operator you became, what would that be?
Palantir was very good at giving autonomy and starting from a place of zero process and structure and adding where it's valuable. The result of that is a lot of chaos and a lot of uncertainty, which does help train people to deal with a startup-like environment.
It is all uncertainty every single day, right? For most of your life.
Yes, that's accurate. And so in that sense, it's very helpful to just get used to that discomfort and used to that uncertainty, and just have kind of dumb conviction in things that you don't think will ever work, but somehow do.
So how do you build conviction?
Depends on the thing, but a lot of it is thinking about the arc of history. That's how I think about it. It's if you think about a 20, 30, 40-year time scale, will the thing we're doing make sense or be the way things are done in the future? And in a lot of ways, I think someone wrote something about this or had a podcast about this recently. They said, like, if you look at people's opinions, different investors' opinions on a company for the next 2 or 3 years, you'll get a lot of heterogeneity. But if you look at people's opinions on a company over a 10-year span, you'll actually converge to a pretty similar place. And I think it's kind of the same thing where there's a lot of noise on a quarter or annual basis. But overall, if you think that, in our case, if you think that transparent, consumer-oriented, better technology, better incentives, better user experience win in antiquated industries that have consequential decisions for people's health and finances, then it's pretty easy to see why Chapter will win. Even if in a given week or given month, we had a bad experience, it was really tough to raise money, it was really tough to get a particular enterprise customer or enterprise partner. Those things are all just sort of near-term noise, and you have to think about the broader vision. Okay,
I want to hold on there. Tough to raise money. Your co-founder is Vivek Ramaswamy, who I guess became more well known after the presidential run and is now running for the governor of Ohio. You had Peter Thiel involved, in the company. He was on the board. You had, he wasn't VP then, but now Vice President JD Vance involved with the company back in his investor days. So I am guessing the company had enough steam. Why do you think it was hard to fundraise?
We've been very fortunate, and I have had a huge benefit of getting to learn from and work with these individuals who are exceptional at what they do. It's always hard to fundraise. I think anyone who tells you that it's easy to fundraise is just full of shit, unless you're exceptionally lucky. But we've been very lucky. We've had very successful fundraisers to be sure, but that doesn't mean it's not hard.
What were Oh no, I completely get it. But what I'm trying to get at is what were the major critiques of the idea or the plan at the time, right? Because because I think like it's also like commonly perceived that, you know, just because these individuals are involved, you know, money's just, you know, of course it'll get sprayed. And in some cases that does happen. We know that, right? Like we were discussing that over lunch. But it's not always true. And sometimes there are critiques of ideas and plans of how industries, over your conviction of how the world will shape in 10 years. I think.
As you know, there's so many things that drive investors' decisions. Is this a hot or sexy theme that this fund is investing in this quarter?
Yeah.
There's internal politics. Does the person who's trying to do the deal have the juice at the firm, and, you know, whatever internal mechanism that they're worried about in terms
do they like you?
Do they like you? Will they look good or bad?
Yeah.
There's fundamentals of the business, which sometimes matter, sometimes don't, frankly.
Right.
There's so many factors that come into play. One thing I have learned is that choosing the investors who are likely to invest is one of the most important things, and not wasting time with investors who aren't. Like, there are many investors who only invest in pure SaaS, or at least, you know, maybe a year ago, only invested in pure SaaS companies. We're not a pure SaaS company. We're at our core, we're a tech-enabled service company. We do have Medicare advisors. They're all full-time employees. We make them insanely good at what they do and insanely efficient. We're already 4x more efficient than the next best person in the industry, and we've been around, you know, 1/10 the length. And with AI, there's a lot we're doing and will continue to do to augment our efficiency. But there are a lot of investors who will just say, oh, we don't want to talk to a company that has humans, right? Directionally. Like, if humans are part of your product, we're not interested. And that's fine. They're wrong. And it's kind of a dumb take, because in the future, tech-enabled services are the only defensible business.
Right.
But whatever. They can have bad returns. That's on them.
Say more on that. How would you define a tech-enabled service business? I've been thinking about this for the last year or so.
Even before LLMs were hot, I think software has become relatively easy to build. Complex software is still hard to build, to be sure. And integration is hard. Building a good user experience around it is hard. But broadly, there are a lot of really strong engineers all over the world. Broadly, software just isn't as hard to build as it used to be. And so, if software is not defensible, then what is? Certainly go-to-market.
Networks.
Networks certainly are defensible. Those can be enterprise networks. Those can be user networks.
Expert networks.
Yeah. But that's people, right?
That's
It's relationships.
It's people.
It's relationships.
And relationships don't scale that easy.
Well, I think it comes to like easy come, easy go revenue, which we're seeing now.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of companies are, especially AI native or AI wrapper companies, are getting very strong traction.
Yeah.
You know, 0 to 10 million, 0 to 20 million ARR in 6 months.
And then,
you know, it's $1 million of ARR on month 7, because it's relatively easy to sign a pilot that people are excited to try, but then the ROI isn't there, or it's actually very expensive to run those models, or a lot of these things happen. And so my view is, easy come, easy go when it comes to revenue.
Tech-enabled service. I think you mentioned that you've brought on these experts as part of the business, that you're training and you're trying to make that entire process more efficient. Can you say more on that? Like, what do these experts do? What are other companies training these experts to do? Is it like, what separates you? Like, if we were to embody this in the 0 to 1-ism, right? Is the quality of the service 10x better? Is it the secret sauce of training, which you figured out internally, right? Built systems around like how these people get trained, and it's become this well-oiled machine now. What do you think separates you in that aspect?
There are 3 things that separate us, one of which is the people we have, certainly. So the 3 things that separate us, one is we are the only unbiased Medicare platform in the country, which means we will always do what's right for the consumer, regardless of whether chapter gets paid and regardless of how we get paid, or if we get paid. So we will always put a consumer in the right Medicare plan for their needs, even when chapter earns nothing, and we will still pay our Medicare advisors, even when that happens. So we align incentives all the way across the board. So incentive alignment is 1. 2 is data and technology. Knowing every benefit of every Medicare plan is actually a really hard data challenge. just to know the prescriptions costs in a Medicare plan, you have to scrape almost 1 trillion records of data.
That's insane.
Which is very hard to do. Like most teams don't have the technical capacity to do that.
I'm sure, This
Like you think big data is easy.
Insane.
Big data is actually still kind of hard when you get to scale.
Yeah.
So that's the second. So like
just structuring that data to be useful is an insane problem.
Exactly. It's very hard. And that's just one of many elements that goes into knowing what Medicare plan is right for each person. There's prescriptions, there's doctors, there's facilities, there's willingness and ability to pay, there's health conditions, right? There's dozens of others.
You have data scientists or data engineers, probably lower level employees in companies who are manually structuring all this data to make it useful.
I wouldn't say manually.
But for a lot of companies, I know this to be true.
Yeah. Like tagging. Yeah,
I mean, it's like the labeling problem is very real in the sense, yes, you can probably automate like to 70% efficiency, and then there's always people in the loop who are going the last mile, which makes this, these data sets incredibly hard to use, which I guess you've answered the question how you're...
Well, the third aspect is we do have the best Medicare advisor team and the best team, I think, in not just in Medicare and healthcare, but in sort of the broader retirement space. I'd say we have one of the best teams in the country.
How did you go about recruiting the teams as someone who didn't come from healthcare?
Yeah. I think that's why we've been more successful than most in this industry, because we aren't biased by looking for people in healthcare.
Right.
I think the reality is healthcare companies are built very differently than technology companies. And we are a technology company, so that's kind of how we think about ourselves. So there's much less dissidence than it might seem from the outside. But a lot of it is personal networks. I recruited some of the best engineers and product managers I worked with at Palantir. I am fortunate to get to work with a bunch of friends that I've built over the past decade or so. And our hiring philosophy is actually kind of weird in that we don't do job descriptions. If you look at our website, it says 0 open roles. We are aggressively hiring.
Love it.
But it's because we don't try to fit people into boxes or have we're just looking for amazing people.
Love it.
We'll craft roles around people.
Right.
We only hire in network, so we'll only hire people we know or can get to know. We don't use recruiters because there's really bad adverse selection there. The best people tend to want to work with people who are in network. And the result is we hire slowly, more slowly than I'd like because we're capacity constrained, but we hire with a very high bar.
Working with friends, I did another interview with this person, Jason Carmen. I don't know if you know of him. He started making all these hype videos about 2 years ago that all the companies launched. It's his company doing all these,
nice.
Most of these
Maybe I should get to know him. Sounds like I could do some hype videos.
The nice videos that you see. So he recruited 4 of his middle school friends to start his sci-fi film company, right? And the question I have around that is how do you manage those relationships, especially if these are older friends?
It's a good question. It can be hard. It really depends on the relationship and both the prior relationship and the working relationship. Right. With some people, it just works. Like it's actually not a challenge. With others, it can be more challenging, and you have to be more cognizant of setting that up, of having clear boundaries, of almost wearing different hats. Like right now I'm wearing my friend hat. Right now I'm wearing my CEO hat.
Expectation setting period.
Yeah. For how we're having a conversation.
And as CEO, the company always comes first, and it's, I guess.
Well, not necessarily. I think for some people, you can have a setup where you say, we will not jeopardize our friendship. If anything ever gets to the point where we're going to part ways because we want to put friendship first. Right. So I think it depends on how you set that up, but it is good to be cognizant.
That's actually a really good point. It's also about how you communicate it. Yeah. That's a really good point. These experts, my understanding right now is the experts that you're recruiting, the healthcare experts, these are people that patients can get on calls with to get advice, right? And you have a network of probably hundreds of them right now. Is your advantage that you're not from healthcare, that you're truly looking from first principles? What would make an expert the right person, right? Maybe you're learning from other industries. Maybe you're learning from hospitality. Maybe you're learning from maybe all sorts of industries. What makes client services the best thing or in a certain industry, and why is it? I think one critique of healthcare is lack of empathy.
Hmm.
I broadly I haven't experienced healthcare in the U.S. for long. Like I've been here for about 4 or 5 years, but I think from people who have moved here, that's what I've heard commonly as well. It's not just here, I guess, like everywhere. It's like this lack of empathy, but also they're in these tireless jobs, healthcare workers, right? They're on the clock 24/7, dealing with emergencies and all sorts of situations, and then not exactly to their fault, right? And one other thing I've heard about healthcare for older people or retired people is they have long calls, right? and that is part. I think that was part of the servicing problem, where you just cannot take that inbound of being on those long calls, and that's maybe what they need. So this is from very little I know, but like, how did you think about these challenges? What did that first principles thinking involve when you were thinking about setting up this expert network? And I think that really is like or one of the secret sauces, right? The network. So I'm just curious about learning more about that.
We fully employ all of our Medicare advisors. So it's not like a marketplace where we're matching you to a random person we don't know. And the reason we do that is because we want to train them, we want to control the experience, and we want to make sure that they're using the software in the right way and that all the incentives are aligned. So to your point on broadly healthcare workers being overworked, 100% true. I actually think most people I know who work in healthcare, they try to be really empathetic. And for the most part, they are. There's always or often a moment or two when they're not, because they're so overworked or their incentives are so messed up. So a lot of it is, how do we set up incentives and systems to prevent those sort of breaking points? But it's hard. It's certainly hard. But our Medicare advisor team, we accept fewer than 0.5% of Medicare advisors who apply. In fact, we don't even take inbound applications anymore. We only do network-based, referral-based recruiting, even for our Medicare advisors, who are a higher scale role than the rest of our company. And you might think we have hundreds. We actually don't. We actually have just over 100 Medicare advisors today.
Okay. I was scrolling. It looked like definitely over 100.
It's just over 100. But the really cool thing is, because we're so efficient, because of our software, and because of our whole incentive model, we are able to support so many more Americans than any other company of a similar sort of team size.
Okay, so like another question here is, when you started, LLMs, hadn't gone mainstream, and now since the 2022, late 2022, they have in sort of every application layer. But another challenge there is maybe it's 85% accurate, and then there's 15% or 10%, hallucination, and accounting for that is like always a challenge. And so what parts do you think have become really efficient through, LLMs, or maybe, you've built in systems within the company? Like, what parts are really working and contribute to efficiency, like post LLM era?
We use AI everywhere. It's awesome. And we can create real value in, I think, a way that non-vertically integrated companies have a harder time with, because our defensibility is not reliant on sort of the underlying model. Our defensibility is all the other things, and AI just makes us hyper efficient and very good at what we do. But actually, being good at using AI is still very hard. So there is a defensibility component there, but when the underlying model changes, our business isn't fucked in a way that, like, with other companies it might be. So one example is, we have an ops team of 1.5 people running what many people would consider an operational heavy company. And so one of the many things that we have to do to run a Medicare brokerage is, all of our Medicare advisors have to be licensed at the federal and state level in every state. They have to be appointed. They have to have contracts with every insurance carrier. And so that's a 50 states, more because of Puerto Rico and others, but 50 states times number of Medicare advisors times number of insurance carriers, which is on the order of 150 or 200, becomes a very big problem in terms of magnitude. And what most companies do is they have teams of ops people dealing with these licensing issues. We have been able to build attended automations to automate so much of this process, and we're able to do it with a very small team. So that's one example. Another example is to have high quality with a product that is largely reliant on phone calls. You kind of need to know what's going on these phone calls. And so the way that even before LLMs, we were pretty good at this. The way that most companies in the space do this is they'll have teams of dozens of people just listening to samples. You can only listen to 1 or 2% of calls, even with 25, 30 people. So that's what they did. We have AI listening to all calls, transcribing all calls, and then flagging whether we think they're not compliant, not quality, or not good user experience. And so we then, and that's in almost real time, we give that feedback to the coach or directly to the Medicare advisor, and we get better quickly. And so it's not just that we get better quickly, but we can also intervene and prevent a mistake with a consumer so that we can then reach out immediately to the member and say, hey, sorry, we made a mistake here. Let's make sure we get you on the right Medicare plan. And that's very hard to do if you aren't good at it. And to your point, it does have to be attended. You do have to have a human in the loop in some respects, at least today. There are things we do to mitigate hallucination and mitigate that, but a lot of it has to be checked, at least at points, by a human, but that's fine.
Oh, interesting. So you've massively cut down operational overhead.
Yes, massively.
Posted a
Our
lot.
HQ too. So we kind of, I mean, everyone's sort of a core member of the team, but we have our Medicare advisors and Medicare support individuals we call advocates, and then we have our product engineering, growth, et cetera, that you'd expect in a tech company. On the latter group, I think we have 40 people in the entire company running a company that is quite large.
Lean company.
Yes, we are probably one of the leanest companies around.
So like all the resources in the company are going into the healthcare expert network, or
they're going to product.
And product, right?
They're going into certainly getting the best Medicare advisors around.
In terms of personnel allocation.
In terms of personnel allocation, well, we do pay our people very well. A lot of nice things about being a small team. One, less politics and less bullshit. Two, you get to work with just good people. You don't have to deal nearly as much with heterogeneity of quality of person. Three, you can pay everyone more. Four, you move faster. I think this is the thing everyone knows cerebrally, but no one actually internalizes and operationalizes. You actually build faster, better with fewer people. Yeah. And so when people are like, oh, we're going too slowly, we need to hire more engineers, it's just wrong.
You just think about the priorities again.
Yeah, it's just wrong.
Reprioritize.
Exactly.
Is that like your message to the team? Like whenever somebody comes over, we need more resources. Like
yeah, I mean, fortunately, my CTO is like the master at this, and sometimes even ahead of me on this. Right. So I don't have to convince most people, which is good. Some of us have to convince other people in the company. And again, it's not that we don't want to hire. We do. We just don't want to hire the wrong person. If you gave me the 5 most exceptional engineers tomorrow, I would hire all of them. It's just very hard to find them. Right.
So the bar for, I guess, like taking the interview, or the bar for even engaging in that conversation is just very high.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's just a waste of everyone's time.
But that's a good segue. How do you allocate your time as CEO? That's like been top of my mind recently.
It changes a lot based on what's going on with the company, what the company needs. Generally, over the course of a year, it's probably a combination of recruiting, a lot of recruiting. I interview every single candidate, including all Medicare advisors. I think that's very important. Again, at most of these legacy Medicare brokerages, it's kind of butts and seats model. It's like, oh yeah, you can breathe. Some recruiter will give you one interview and then they give you a job, and they expect somewhere between 50 and 80% of people to churn out within a year. Our model is very different. We want as low of churn as possible. We invest a lot into making our team amazing. We are not willing to accept the cost of bad user experience if you deal with a bad person. And so we are very adamant about a pretty robust interview process, even for Medicare advisors.
Because you're thinking about them as part of the company.
They're a core part of the team.
If they're a core part of the team,
then you think about it like anyone else.
What can you do for them to be with the company forever?
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly. Whereas other companies think about them as like this ad hoc, almost staffed contractor workforce, even when they're not contractors, which is so dumb because these are the people who are most directly interacting with your users. So you should care in many ways more about them than less about them. The whole way the legacy Medicare industry operates is just kind of backward.
What other companies in the space are providing a similar service? Maybe not in this way, but
no one in Medicare is providing a similar service, unfortunately, frankly, for Americans. There are other companies that I think do a very good job for building tech-enabled services in a lot of categories, but no one in Medicare.
Which companies do you admire in that space?
I actually think of Palantir as like an exceptional, used to be more of a tech-enabled services company. Today is much more of a tech company. Right. And the FDE model is like often talked about and very poorly understood today.
What is it?
What is it? It's changed a lot, but it used to be embed exceptional engineers with customers so that A, you actually know what the customers need and want, and B, you can build or configure products so that you can not be there in the future, so that the customer can actually self-serve over time. That's the idea. But there's a lot of other cultural things that need to come into it. You need to have a pretty high contract value to justify it, millions of dollars a year, not a few $100,000 a year. You need to have the culture of being able to feed product feedback from the field back into core platform and have a prioritization mechanism to do that. You have to have people incentivized to do it well, who are actually good. One of the big differences between Palantir's early FDE team, for deployed engineering team, and most other companies like a Salesforce, sort of customer solutions or analog, is just the quality. Like an FDE at Palantir could have been a core software engineer at Meta or Google or anywhere, whereas at least back in the day, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a core sort of customer solutions person at Salesforce could not be a core engineer at Meta. It's just a very different archetype of engineer. And so I think holding a really high bar was very helpful for Palantir. I mean, in general, helpful for any company. But I think that's a big difference that people don't really understand as well.
What's another company outside Palantir which does the tech-enabled services model really, really well?
I actually don't know of that many companies that do tech-enabled services well. There are a lot of companies I admire that do support really well and make people feel great. Like I think Robinhood has built an amazing brand and amazing support.
Right.
Even with what's probably mostly automated. I think Chime, a lot of financial products,
Services products, yeah.
have done this in a really, really strong way. I mean, even like a PayPal or a Venmo have actually done quite well at sort of making people feel confident and trusted with their money, whether there's a human or not.
You know what? TurboTax. I don't know if you're familiar, but for doing your own taxes, they're also like very interested. It's a way better, like probably customer experience than interacting with a person.
Yeah, well now they've actually leaned in, as far as I'm aware, they've actually leaned into people more the past like 5 years. Now they offer like you can pay to have an actual accountant help you.
Yeah. Well, right, and I prefer not to, but yes.
Yeah. But it's an option. And I think they're leaning into it.
FDEs being deployed at or forward deployed engineers at being an integral part of like a customer they're working with and integrating themselves with the problem that the customer has is I guess it's also like it's also a defining part of the company culture, right? And how you treat your customers and what it means to solve a problem for your customer. And what were some things you learned from the Palantir culture that, because I think like culture is also like very, very important.
It's the most important.
It's the most important thing. And how have you thought about like building culture in your own company?
A lot of lessons and a lot of anti-lessons, frankly. One lesson, which we just talked about, is keeping a really high talent bar. I interviewed hundreds, maybe 1,000 plus people when I was at Palantir. And so just understanding what good is and knowing how to collect signal out of an interview is actually very hard and takes, in my opinion, takes a lot of practice. Not that I'm great at it necessarily, but just have a lot of reps so I can kind of spot things at this point pretty well and pretty quickly. So keeping a high bar and really, again, people say it, it's like the most commonly said thing that's important, but very few companies actually do it. Like when I say keep a high bar, I mean, there are probably less than 10 people who are good enough to fill a given role. Not 10,000, 10. And so that means it's going to take some time to find those 10, to make sure they're, to find them at a point where they're ready to switch roles. It's very hard. And so it takes a lot of time.
And so you don't need to rush into it.
And these are often most people who have joined Chapter, it's taken over a year to recruit them. Not everyone, but most people, because you're building relationships. It's in network. It's, it's a big commitment. We're investing in the person. That person is investing in the company, and it needs to be a good fit. So that's one lesson. Another lesson certainly is the focus on important mission problems to solve. there's so many problems, so many companies, any company can solve a lot of problems, and so many problems that we at Chapter can solve for our members, for seniors, for people who are retiring, but really focusing on the most important problems for people up front, even if they're some of the hardest problems. It has cultural benefits of real mission alignment. It has all these benefits of making us more important to the user than just, great, I can get a $5 discount off of my X. That's fine. People will like it, but it's not meaningful.
Is that part of like that, in some cases, year-long process where you're trying to establish if like this person is a good fit for the mission you're on? Is it like, is mission fit a thing?
Yes and no.
Is it role dependent?
No, it's that very few people wake up saying, I want to solve Medicare. It's not a sexy problem.
Right.
It's not something anyone our age really thinks about.
Right.
And so from that perspective, it's not, I need someone who's obsessed with Medicare.
Right.
I don't at all.
Okay.
I think when I say mission, I mean people who care about solving important problems in the world.
Yeah.
And they can learn to realize very quickly that Medicare is a very important problem to solve and has hugely consequential implications for people. If people don't care about that, or people care more about how do we optimize
you
ad
can
revenue.
pick up on that very fast, right?
Yeah,
that whether they understand the gravity of the problem or not, and right.
I'm not wired like this, so I don't get it. But like people who are more stoked to like optimize ad revenue or optimize like a massive distributed system, like they probably aren't a good fit for us. And frankly, I think they're wrong. But we're all wired differently.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned like you've probably interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, people at this point. How have your questions like changed over time? What did you learn from asking?
Yeah.
What were some of the questions you think you shouldn't have asked like in the beginning? And
I used to ask, part of it was Palantir used to encourage us asking really weird, crazy questions. So I did. I ask much more simple questions these days. I think also part of it is my role in the interview process.
Right.
When I was at Palantir, I was earlier in the interview process. As CEO, I'm usually later. Sometimes I'm early, but I'm usually later.
Right.
And so I'm more looking for things that the team flagged or want to confirm things. But one of the questions I ask pretty much everyone, no matter where I am in the interview process, is just walk me through the major career decisions you've made and why. And that is
that's a really good question.
It's one of the most revealing questions because you can understand people's motivations, you can understand why they make decisions, how they make decisions, thought process, what they care about, what they optimize for. You can dig into, here's a cool project I worked on. You can dig into that if you like. It just gives so many degrees of freedom of signal gathering. So that's probably the most consistent one I ask. But I used to ask crazy questions.
You're trying to learn how this person thinks in all those processes, right? Everything else is like probably you're hoping you can learn a skill, and you should be adaptable enough to keep learning, and then I guess that's like it gives you the intentionality behind the thought process at the time, and dives into some sort of self-awareness as well, right?
Yeah.
If it exists or no.
And I learned that question from Palantir's head of talent, who actually recruited me to Palantir in college.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
What are some things you pick up on, like within minutes into an interview, or and like, do you prefer in person or do you do Zoom as well? Like, what's the company?
We do both. We prefer in person when we can. Certainly. All of our product and sort of tech company people are in New York, or almost all. And then all of our Medicare advisors, for the most part, are remote in the U.S. working from home. So most of those are video. But we do a lot of in-person events and dinners as part of the interview process sometimes.
So what do you pick up on, like, a few minutes into the interview, and which you've gotten now really good at? Like, what are some like quick tells on the person?
I think the words people use are really important, and it's probably judgmental. It is judgmental, but an interview is intended to be judgmental, right?
It's intended to be, yeah.
I think people who use words that are superfluous, like passionate, very passionate, tend to not be as passionate. I think there's a lot of sort of covering up of things and leaning into things deliberately that are just relatively easy to see through.
Right.
That's certainly one. I'm not as great at articulating why, but I am pretty good at knowing if someone's going to be a good fit or a good performer. And that is a combination of words they use. It's things they choose to go into. It's how they explain things. And sometimes that can be judged very quickly, and sometimes it takes a little bit more time. But one sort of tactic in the back of my mind that Palantir did teach very well, and I've really really focused on at Chapter, and I teach my team to do this, is if someone is doing really well in the interview, the goal in your back of your mind is, what can I ask them as the next question that will help me understand how great are they really? Like, push them as hard as you can push.
Ask a lot of whys.
Ask a lot of whys is one way to do it, but really thinking about, how do I see how high their ceiling is? And then if someone's doing really poorly, it's, what is there a question I could ask that would change my mind? Like, what would I need to see out of the next question such that I would say yes to this person, so that you're not just wasting everyone's time. Like, you want to be asking questions that will change your
reveal
mind.
something new about that person. And that's a good way to look at it. Since I started, like, this campus program, similar to you in the early days, I started interviewing for a lot of volunteers. I'm not paying them, okay, but still I was interviewing a lot of people. I always asked like all these weird questions, and I never really learned how interviews went, and they were supposed to be until today. I just ask a lot of weird questions. and
what's the weirdest question you asked?
I think what people I think people become very intentional very early on, like around high school. And a lot of people just don't like to admit it. So I like to ask what they were doing in their high school and why, or what were they doing in their college and why. So it just go way back, like nothing about their work even. Like, why do you think they were doing it? Because I think I can probably answer every part. Like, why did I choose to do it? And you sometimes think that it's socially unacceptable to give the real answer. And I'm just trying to get the real answer. Like, do you really have a why? And sometimes it's not there, and it reveals similar thing about a person, which you might get in like, what was your decision behind choosing something in your career? So that's something I used to ask a lot. And I thought maybe I should stop asking this question at some point. So I started reading Tyler Cowen's book on talent. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
So I started reading that, and there are a lot of Thiel-inspired questions there, and which I'm sure were part of Palantir as well. Did you stop asking those? Which I think one of them is, it was supposed to be a unique question, but it went mainstream, right? Which is around
the contrarian.
Yeah.
We used to ask that at Palantir sometimes.
Right. What does it reveal about people, if anything?
The intent is that it gets at, can someone think about anything in a contrarian way? Can they think for themselves? Can they think from a first principles perspective? That's the intent.
Right.
Does it always work? No. Yeah. Also, I do think it's hard. Some people are just not great in interviews, and it's I don't like asking questions that can trip people up and that are actually not like, the question you want to ask is one, and how someone responds to it should be correlated with how they're going to perform. Yeah. Like, some consultants are a great example. Like this is a fun example. So I did business school undergrad as one of my degrees, and was on the very much on-campus recruiting, finance consulting, conveyor belt intention for a long time, because it's just what everyone does. Yeah. I was always they had these ridiculous on-campus recruiting events, like McKinsey and Goldman Sachs would come to Penn and Wharton and give these presentations, and every single student went in a suit and tie to listen to these info sessions. I went in jeans and a t-shirt, and I was the only one. So like, the people presenting aren't going to know who I am. I'm not giving my name, and it's just so dumb.
Doesn't matter.
Dress up, and it doesn't matter. And so obviously it wasn't a very good fit for them. But I did interview do the case consulting questions, and I remember in one of them, they asked me a math question, like basically do some math in your head, and I got most of it right. I got tripped up on one of the answers, and then at the end they said, your answers were great across the board. You just missed that one. You just missed that one math question. I was like, oh, that's interesting. How often do you have to do math without Excel in your daily job? And their response was, that's not the point. I was like, oh, so what is the point? Yeah. I was like, what is the point? And he couldn't answer it. He's like, this probably isn't a good fit. I was like, yeah, we're probably not a right fit for each other.
You were like, yeah, that's the same, man.
like there's just no first principle thinking. No. It's all about, like, are you a good interviewer? Are you going to be good at the job?
But that's most interviews at most scale companies.
If I had my druthers, my ideal would be to reference check people before I ever talk to them, which is part of what recruiting in network is. In a way, it's an implied reference check. But I just think you get so much more signal by talking to people who have worked with someone for years than from any number of hours of conversation.
100%. Do you think doing whether it's like for the engineering team or the business team, doing project-based interviews is helpful.
Yes, it can be. It depends on the team, but I think it
Right.
can be very helpful. Whether it's a case interview, not like a business school case interview, but
Right.
we have a real problem, let's work on
Yeah,
it together interview, and give people time to prepare for it. Or if it's a let's work for a month together on a
Yeah.
contract basis, that can be very helpful.
I found that to be the most efficient way of hiring. Like, because nothing tells you more about a person than just like a month of actually doing a
Yes,
project.
but it's hard because the best people are not willing to do it.
I know that's the
And
that's
so-
the
and so-
limiter.
And so
Yeah,
almost in a
that's
weird,
the rate limiter.
in a weird way. I mean, there are life
In
situations
some
sometimes
cases, yeah.
where sometimes people will be between roles already and
Yeah,
they're really
yeah,
taking,
yeah.
like they quit because they didn't like their job. They're
Yeah.
taking time to figure out the next thing and then they might be open to it. But if you're trying to recruit someone out of a job, they're not going to bother. And that's
yeah,
actually
yeah.
a good signal that they won't bother.
yeah.
So it's hard to know.
And like, I guess it could work for really young early talent, and then it like for mid and senior level talent, it sort of falls through. It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
We got deep into like interviews.
Great.
Yeah, that was fun. Have you actually? This would be interesting since you're in the being interviewed chair. What do you think has compounded for you in your life, like decisions, knowledge, and how intentional were you at every stage? I mean, this is like an example where you realized, this consulting rat race is like probably not for me, even though it's like very prized sort of thing at like the business school.
Yeah.
Not the track for me. And then you also started you started a diplomacy club on college campus, right? A nonprofit, which is very unusual. A lot of I don't think a lot of kids do that. So what was your thought process behind each of those things that you chose to do?
Not all of it was a choice, to be clear.
Okay.
Like I have a real
Right.
problem with authority, and that doesn't drive well with a lot of big corporations. So I didn't get offers from a lot of companies that I did interview for, to be clear. So some of it was a decision on my
You
end.
and me both.
Some of it was other people making decisions for me, which thank you to them for not accepting me. I think I make decisions often on what are the options in front of me at a given time. I don't actually think about where do I want to be in 10 or 20 or 30 years, except with the one exception of the human.
Right.
So when I would interview with a bank or a consulting firm, I did think to myself, do I want to be this person in 20 years? Like, does this person seem happy? Do they seem interesting? Do they seem like someone I want to be? And the answer was always no. So that made it easier. But in terms of like what I do at a given time, I'm thinking about, is this the best opportunity for me for the next year?
Right.
Not is this the thing I want to do for the next 20 years? Because it's just too big a commitment, and you can't make decisions that way, and the world changes so quickly.
yeah.
Like it's just not even real.
You're assuming you know how the world is going
Yeah, and
to
you
work
don't.
out in 10 years, which is
And you have no idea.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the broad view I take. Dorm Room Diplomacy was a really cool organization. My friend, actually one of my co-founders at Chapter, and I started in college together.
Oh, wow.
And the entire point was we thought that I studied Middle East history in college. And I thought that most of the interactions that people were having, especially studying the Middle East from the US, were all through the lens of news and like just dramatic bias. And there's always bias, but just not really firsthand experiences. So partially as a function of that and partially as a function of going through a different organization called Seeds of Peace that I was a part of when I was younger. I really wanted to allow Americans and Middle Eastern college students to talk directly. Didn't have to be, oftentimes it was about politics, but it didn't have to be.
Right.
It was just, there's so much value in giving someone access to on the ground truth or
Yeah.
someone else's truth.
I agree.
That is so hard to get through the news or through reading history. And so that was the intent.
What are the most interesting conversations or insights that came out of it? Like, I think one thing people realize is they have more common ground than differences.
Absolutely, more common ground. A lot of it was the perception of the other. So the Middle Eastern or Arab person in this case might say, "Hey, I assume the American thinks this about me," and the American would say the vice versa. And when the reality was neither actually had that perception in the first place. That was one. The other just really helpful skill is just being able to talk to people who have such different views than you and not being triggered by things that just just staying calm and being able to have a healthy dialogue about really anything was.
Why was that important to you?
I think it's important to explore diverse ideas, and it's really hard to do that if you can't have productive and constructive conversations. Very simple example. I went to this summer camp, Seeds of Peace, when I was 15 or 16, and I grew up in a very pro-Israel household, and it was the first time I'd been exposed to people who called the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, the Israeli military, terrorists. And to me, that was very hard as a conversation to have. It had never entered my brain that, and similar for the U.S., like the idea that someone could call the American military a terrorist organization was mind-boggling, but probably more than half the earth believes that to be true.
Right.
I don't believe that to be true, to be clear, but half the earth probably
does.
That's
the perception.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you can't engage with half the earth, that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
Like you have to be able to it's, my views may or may not change, but really to have a productive conversation is really important. And not just for these big geopolitical conversations, but even for business. If you have a disagreement business strategy,
100%.
like you have to be able to talk about these things.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. But what's another such organization that you admire?
I really do live under a rock these days, and I focus all my time on chapter, so it's really hard. I wish I spent more time with these organizations.
I think it's an incredible opportunity. Just creating. I think we don't have enough organizations pushing pure dialogue.
Yeah.
And pushing people to. I think what I'm also seeing in like these younger generations is conflict management and conflict resolution is like. It is not a skill they have.
There's actually another organization that I really admire. It's called MEET, Middle East Education Through Technology. It's another Israeli-Palestinian focused one.
Oh, interesting.
It's partnered with MIT to train Israelis and Palestinian high schoolers to basically build software companies together in high school. I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword with all these organizations where this alone is probably not actually going to do that much. It's not going to change the world. It's just not, unfortunately.
Geopolitics are more complicated than that.
They can be more complicated, yes. But they are really valuable to developing as humans. Right. And I think they're almost more leadership organizations than they are geopolitical organizations.
Yeah, so you're probably right in the sense that it's probably not going to change anything geopolitically because the geopolitical landscape is more complicated than that. But like the perceptions we build internally without having interacted with the other side, it does a whole lot for that. Like, and I also come from a high conflict country, right? Like Pakistan. So there's all sorts of perceptions built about, like Pakistan and India, and they're always at war or don't really like each other. But the people in both countries are actually fine. Right. And same with all our neighbors. We have Iran or Afghanistan on the other side. And the people don't really care as much, but some people do. It really depends on. Sure. And so I guess like the more there's like, I actually think like if Pakistan and India had more open borders, you would see less radicalized sort of populations within the countries. And the fact that they don't interact with each other is the problem.
Yeah,
probably.
That was always a huge issue where, again, this perception is so different than reality. And people just assume that the other hates them.
Because you're not engaging. Which is really interesting. Okay, so we were talking about like decisions that, some decisions you made, some decisions, that the got made for you that you think, I guess at least in hindsight, that got compounded or that at the time what your thought process was. You were in many ways getting trained for the Palantir job, but what were the other things on the table?
I considered going to a DC-based geopolitical consulting group. There's a lot of them in DC.
Is that something you wanted to do?
It was very exciting in theory because I cared a lot about foreign policy. I still do. I would, in theory, be able to work with cool companies, organizations, parts of the government that do stuff like this. But I did an internship at a Middle East policy think tank in college and sort of worked adjacent to the government in a couple capacities. And I was just always disappointed at how bureaucratic it was. Right. And the lack of impact was so real and I couldn't get over it. It was both a cultural mismatch of people telling me how to dress, how to operate, how to do things. Sometimes it made sense, but often it didn't. And when it didn't it wasn't a good fit. Like I'm very fine for people to tell me how to do things if it's correct.
Right.
But if it's not correct, I'm less okay with it.
You didn't have to dress when you were meeting governments with Palantir?
Actually, I'll mention that in a second. But the second aspect of it is largely that it's cultural, but it's also just the gap of time from when you do a thing to when you get impact in a thing is so significant in the government. Like at a think tank, people are writing these essays and they're very smart. They're very competent. They really know what they're talking about because they spend all day researching a thing. But in a lot of cases, their goal is to write a paper that a government official reads. And that's like their win. And to me, that's just not exciting. Like, I don't care if someone reads what I write. It's like, are they taking an action because of it?
Right.
Who knows?
How do you influence action? Yeah.
On your other question on dress, Palantir has this concept that we incorporate a lot of chapter called casting, which is playing a role for a given context. Yeah. So in some cases, I was cast as the nerdy engineer, and I intentionally wore what people perceive nerdy engineers to wear, which is not nice clothes. Even when we were talking to very high-ranking officials, there were some times when I was, the business person or the person in charge of making sure the kids were in control, and then I did wear nice clothes. So it actually was quite deliberate in how we did it.
It's very, very interesting. As in my day job, when we started getting a lot of government customers, I used to always dress like, I wasn't dressed like this. It was probably worse. All sorts of, I'm just wearing a hoodie, walking up, and it took me a long time to get formal shoes. And then, I realized they do talk to me differently when I'm wearing a suit or a jacket, and then I was casting myself
100%.
as a different when I didn't want to be seen, I was like, I wanted to be a nobody in the room. I would walk in with the hoodie, and I'm like, okay, this is great. Like,
oh yeah. I mean, there was a time I was 23 years old, and Palantir made me the head of one of the largest U.S. government contracts they had, and I was 23. I looked like I was 15. I still look like I'm way younger than I am, and so I actually wore no prescription glasses because it made me look older. So I would go into meetings very cognizant of how I looked.
The perception is real.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be naive to believe that, you're not being judged in a room. Like, you're walking in with in some perception. You have to manage that perception very deliberately.
Absolutely.
Just I got a reminder of this because I started going back to DC this year, as they've been more open for business. And we did a couple dinners, and let's just say I was underdressed for the occasion.
Understood.
And I got a note from my friend who was in the administration, and is like, at the next dinner, would you mind wearing a tie and putting on a jacket?
Yep.
He made sure to remind me the morning off, and I did. I was like, okay,
Sure.
well, you
Yeah.
cast yourself as
Yeah, it's funny. I think in this administration, because so many more people who come from tech are in the administration, it's easier for me to dress up, actually, because I'm like, oh, these people who don't like dressing up are dressing up. It would be kind of annoying if I didn't match them.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's people who have been in government for 30 years, they're used to it, then it's less of a burden for them. Yeah. So today I actually have less of a problem dressing up than I used to.
Yeah, that was the thing I had to. That's when I first bought the formal shoes.
Nice.
Which was interesting.
But not wearing them for me, I understand.
Well, I matched with you. We got the same ons. This is a fun story. I don't know if I've heard this one before about Palantir. This is a fun story. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't get edited out. Well, I'm taking back all editing rights, so maybe not.
Did you not always have editing rights?
I did have editing rights. That's true. Well, I was just pretending that you get some editing control because it's a tech-friendly.
I appreciate that.
Tech-friendly podcast.
I assume I have no control over
this is
any,
great. Like
any production.
You say anything and it's out.
Yeah, that's what I assume. Or you write anything and it's probably in China's hands.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh, actually, on China.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have this plan, but since we're on the topic,
sure.
There are I guess two camps. So the one camp is very afraid that China's out innovating America, and they think that they're truly making progress at a very rapid pace. for whatever reason, that could, that, it very well is probably that, the government subsidizes everything, entire industries, and, puts hundreds of thousands of people to work until like they find monopoly in that industry worldwide, and so what if for whatever reason they are able to like grow these industries really, really fast, and the US can't compete because it just doesn't function that way. And that was true for a lot of legacy industries where you're copying the West, right? And I come from Pakistan, where it didn't excite me because a lot of the businesses that that were being started were like basically adaptations of successful businesses in the West, cultural adaptations of successful businesses in the West, at a way slower pace, probably 20 years behind. But that was the model for Asia, the East, and having been closed to the region, that was my perception that that's all it is, right? Is there's less actual invention happening. So now the perception is that even on the frontiers of technology, they're probably really close. What are your thoughts? Since you are you do keep up with geopolitics, maybe you've thought about this more than my other guests on the show.
My exposure to geopolitics has waned a lot just because I'm so focused on Chapter the past few years.
Right.
Certainly more focused than I was when I was at Palantir
Right.
on geopolitics. I think everything you said is right, that over the past decade or two, China has really caught up in a lot of ways. I think a lot of how they caught up was through stealing IP, through copying things.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing left to copy, like, can they actually innovate, is a good question. I think we don't know.
Yeah.
On defense, they have, on things like cyber and technology, I think they have caught up in a lot of ways. On just operational logistics, they have not. There's a lot that goes into like very unsexy components of a military
Right.
that are just as, if not more important than a lot of the technology. It's SOPs. It's having people who know how to act in certain situations under pressure. And that I do think the U.S. still has a massive advantage on, even if not on all of the technology. Though on most of the technology, we still do have an advantage, but
Right.
it is diminishing. I mean, the most common counterexample everyone says is shipbuilding. China's outbuilding ships for relative to the U.S. and the West by an insane amount.
Yeah.
And that is a real problem. But
Whether they work or not is a separate question. But
well, exactly. I think part of it is we don't know exactly if, or some part of the U.S. government hopefully knows. I don't know if they're going to work well. But a lot of it is sort of on the cyber side, some mutually assured destruction.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. How do you think, and I don't know if you've thought about this a lot, but since you've been close to Peter, who believes that we've stagnated in the last like 50 years or so, right, and has held that belief. I don't know, do you hold the same belief that we've relatively stagnated on progress in the last 50 years?
I've gone back and forth on my view on this over the past decade. I used to very much agree with Peter on this, that the leaps that the technological progress we've made over the past 20 years has largely been incremental or linear rather than stepwise. But a lot of quick incremental improvements do add up and do create over time pretty important advances. I think AI still isn't yet that sort of massive step up.
Right.
I think it might be over the next 2 to 5 years, but I just don't think it is yet. Today, it makes us hopefully more efficient and allows us to do things much faster. But it hasn't really changed the world, in at least to me, in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Like, it makes it easier to do a search for things online and get an answer instead of clicking on a couple links, which is great to remove a couple clicks.
And
but is that changing the world?
And there are all these major operating efficiencies, but again, right?
Yeah.
Is that changing the world?
Yeah.
We
I don't know. I think some of
Right.
the stuff that's happening in space has the potential to change the world in pretty meaningful ways, both on the militarization of space and just on the ability to travel through space, the ability to communicate through space. I think that's very exciting. There's a lot of actually massive changes there. We are starting to get self-driving cars be real.
Right.
Which I think
finally, it was always 5 years away, and now it's like
it was
finally.
always 5 or 10 years away.
Yeah.
For the past 30 years. it's finally largely here
Yeah.
or coming.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's still 5 to 10 years away forever.
Yeah.
But that's very exciting for a lot of reasons. So I think in many ways we're making incremental changes. In a few places we're making pretty big advances.
Right. I guess the comparison is to the prior 2 centuries, right? Like where in the physical world, the rate of progress was just like pretty different. Is it because we didn't have World War III? How correlated is, and I was rereading Idea Factory, and I don't know if you read that book. It's about Bell Labs and the founding of Bell Labs.
Oh, I have read it. Yeah, it's been a while. Yep.
The major accelerated breakthroughs actually happened during the the
well, it's expected. Wars
right?
always or usually create
Yeah.
technological advancement out of necessity. I don't know that you need a massive war.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like, but what else? I'm really looking hard to see what else. Like, there periods that accelerate technology outside of the war cycles, and
well, it's not that we haven't had wars.
Yeah,
we haven't had World War III in a kinetic way, but in a lot of ways, we do have a soft or a cold World War III right now.
Right.
Yeah, so there are certainly wars and skirmishes going on. I mean, Ukraine and Russia is a very kinetic war today.
Right.
The U.S. I mean, one thing I did learn or appreciated at Palantir that was very hard for me to appreciate beforehand was just the vastness of the U.S.'s military empire is insane. Like our Marine Corps and our Navy is so vast.
Right.
That we're going to be in fights in places.
Yeah. Yeah, the American Empire is pretty amazing.
It is.
I don't think people realize why the world stays online.
Like the American almost culture is I mean, not almost like the actual culture and some of the core identity of the U.S. is to be counter-imperialist.
Yeah.
Not have an empire.
Is that changing?
In some ways, but I don't know. It's hard for me to tell. There's always these pockets, like some political stripes are hawkish and then not hawkish and then isolationist, and it almost seems like it's cyclical. And it's hard, especially right now, it's hard to put labels on anyone because people's views are like, what even is the Democratic Party or the Republican Party today?
Right.
I don't know. Like people have such different views under the same umbrella. So I don't know.
Well, we'll go back to progress. So, okay. So largely you're back on incremental, progress across most areas. And then, maybe we're going to finally see about 50, 60 years later, really major step function leaps in certain areas. Self-driving is one of them. Maybe, space or back to space is another one, right? And we'll see a ton of progress there. I don't think in the last 60 years we speak of some of these innovation labs the same way, you would speak of the Skunkworks program, or, you would speak of the Bell Labs program or the Manhattan Project. Some of these projects that you still like nostalgically, like, those are the examples of 20th century we keep using. And Google's X was probably supposed to be that, but I don't think widely people speak of it in a similar fashion. Why do you think we haven't seen those either from a corporation, the scale of, like, are people just not that ambitious anymore? Like, what is it? Like, what is it a function of?
I think there is a lack of ambition. I don't know that's the core reason. I do think there's a broadly lack of ambition.
Yeah.
And it's high risk, high reward, because it's much easier to focus on problems that have a conceivable way to be solved.
Yeah, I think earlier you were referring to like even problem selection, right? How like people are thinking in quarterly cycles, and what is the flavor of the month? That was more in the fundraising aspect. Whereas these are like multi-decade commitments.
Absolutely, and it's hard. It's hard to create a multi-decade commitment, but there are some. But yeah,
what is something that comes to your mind, or something like maybe not at the same scale, but a project that?
I mean, air travel, airplanes. Air travel has arguably gotten worse over the past 60 years, not better.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's gotten
Yeah.
worse though. No, my point was like the am I right in like ensuring that there's nothing comparable to like Bell Labs or Skunkworks in like recent?
I struggle with this one because I think in most cases that type of thing doesn't work. Like I like to say a lot that if you have an innovation arm of your company, you've already lost, because your company shouldn't need an innovation arm. It should just have
That's the job.
It should just have risk in it, risk
Right.
tolerance in it.
Right.
And this is more relevant to
Right.
large legacy organizations, like a big healthcare organization or whatever.
Right.
But there's a similar aspect to it, which is,
So many inventions came out of there.
yes,
Maybe they did. So yes, they did not capitalize on all of them, and
Yeah.
the companies didn't capitalize on
Yeah.
all of them. But a lot of inventions did. It's
A lot of
very similar
inventions
to
did,
like
yeah.
how universities, some inventions used to come out of there at once upon a time, right?
yeah, I think Manhattan Project was a function of necessity,
Right.
of being afraid that we were going to lose our way of life. And I do think if you're going to create massive weapons, you might need that
Right.
that impetus. But I think it's very hard to justify massive investment in things that aren't going to have a commercial or an obvious commercial application in the near term. And that's become harder and harder, I think.
Is it a function of capital markets?
I mean, it's all a function of each other, right? It's all cyclical. Like, is it a function? If it's a function of capital markets, it's a function of like societal pressure on capital markets. So
Right.
it's all.
It's all tied. It's
Yeah.
more complex than that.
Yeah.
I had Colin Greenspon of Narya Capital on my last podcast, who's is a major investor, and of course JD Vance was a part of the fund as well. He brought up this interesting point on the podcast that a lot of unique ideas die because they don't innovate on the business model enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if we look at chapter from that lens, what would you consider your business model innovation?
It's probably two. One is the fact that we still enroll people in Medicare plans even when we don't get paid is, to me, not that crazy, but to the industry, totally crazy. And we're the only people who've ever done it. And in fact, when I started the company, people told me it was illegal to do, which it's not. Helping consumers without being paid is illegal. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But that's how like inertia driven and crazy some of these legacy Medicare companies are. So one is actually aligning incentives and paying our Medicare advisors even when we don't get paid, and allowing Medicare advisors to help consumers even when we don't get paid. So that's probably the first. The second is really our go-to-market. Every single Medicare broker has grown pretty much on the big ones have grown on direct-to-consumer ads, TV ads, radio ads, whatever it is, billboards, whatever, and a lot of direct mail. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but they're much more focused on sort of user acquisition than they are on retention or high quality experience. We do very little direct-to-consumer work. Almost all of our user acquisition is through organizations, whether they're health systems, financial services firms, or more influencers like media talent. But importantly, they're not just ads. Like, we actually create relationships with, to our point on networks, we actually create relationships with these organizations. We try to be a strategic guide to them.
Right.
And they care about the quality. If we do a bad job, we do a very good job on almost all cases, but we're not perfect, and we're operating at a very high scale. So unfortunately, there are a couple people who don't have a perfect experience, and we try to rectify it. But the partner hears that, and they will get upset because they care about their audience liking them. They care about their patients liking them. They care about their clients liking them. And if you don't have that high quality product experience, you can't access these go-to-market channels. But I think those are really the two that we've kind of created in the Medicare industry. One is aligned incentives, and the second is go-to-market.
Well, we were talking about doing the 0-1-ism, so we'll like pick a few. One of them was that I'm having a hard time reconciling you going after a niche market. Seems like a very big market. But underserved, right? So if it's underserved, it's still niche. But what's think like Tesla Master Plan 1. What's the chapter master plan? How has it evolved?
Yeah, niche is all relative.
Yeah.
The little part of Medicare we're in is a $50 billion annual market, roughly, for 70 million Americans.
Wow.
So it's not a small market.
Yeah.
Overall, the market I kind of think about ourselves in is kind of the retirement market or helping seniors, at first in this country and then around the Western world, and that's
Wow.
closer to $1 trillion TAM. So yeah, we're niche relative to the $1 trillion TAM.
How would you describe the retirement market?
So most of Western society thinks about our elders as needy and greedy and as unproductive once they turn a certain age.
Right.
They can't contribute back to society. They don't have wisdom to share. Probably very different than how they're treated in Pakistan.
Right.
But in a lot of the Western world, this is very much the status quo. And the narrative of what it means to be retired in this country hasn't been updated since Del Webb Sun Cities in the 1960s. And people are yearning today for a new narrative of what it means to be retired. What does it mean to be 60 or 70 years old today? What do I do with my time? How do I have the health and the finances I want to live the best chapter of my lives? That's why the company is called Chapter and not X Medicare.
Right.
It's because we happen to help people with Medicare today because it's an important problem. But what we're really building is the trust layer between America's seniors and American technology, particularly in the age of AI. So the way we think about building the company is today we're focused on helping people with their health. We are going to soon be helping people with their financial lives. And then over time, we're helping people find purpose and have the sort of necessary components to live with purpose in this longer and longer chapter of their lives.
Yeah, because like if we assume that like the human lifespan is going to, for America it's like 78 or 79 right now, if it's going to keep going up with all the innovation in healthcare, longevity, life sciences domains, maybe if it goes to 90 in the next like 20 years, then I actually, like on that note, my maternal grandfather retired at 82. I think he could have kept going at 90 or something. Tim's dad was at 95 going to office twice a week. And I think you're right that this concept of retirement, it hasn't been updated. And that is probably a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And
that's what we're building.
Yeah. To like go back with purpose. Now I get it.
And the really cool thing is basically no company, definitely not in the US, I don't think in the world, has been able to build a scalable user acquisition engine to reach seniors.
It's health. And that's your door in. And then you're going to unlock 30% of the country's GDP, which is...
Yeah, exactly.
I just like connected the thing in my head. I'm like absorbing it. This is brilliant. Oh my God. Yeah. And the mission is actually, the mission is incredible. When you look at the full master plan. Okay. So another zero to one-ism. Let's see. Don't compete and build a monopoly.
Mm-hmm. The ironic thing about this is we are in a very competitive market. There are over 100,000 Medicare brokers in the country. There are a lot of them. Some of them are very small, 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 person companies. Some of them are very large, but it's very fragmented. There's no company in the country that has more than 2 or 3% market share of Medicare brokers. Right. So in some ways it's very competitive, but there's no one who's taking a tech or data-driven approach. There's no one who's aligning incentives.
On average, when did these companies get started? Are these like...
Long time ago. I mean, there's new ones. There's new small mom and pop brokers starting every day. But the legacy Medicare industry really got popular in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. It became...
So most of these are
bigger.
like over 20 years old.
Yeah.
Like the ones with the highest market share are over
20 to 30 years old, yeah.
Right.
Most of them.
And the smaller ones are like, I'm guessing, not venture funded, or
correct.
Most people...
Even the bigger ones are mostly PE funded, not venture funded.
Or more, yeah. I guess most people thought they weren't VC backable because they're service-enabled businesses.
Yeah. Or because they just...
Yeah.
A very simple way I think about it and explain to people is most of these companies have IT departments, not engineering departments.
Yeah.
And that kind of tells you what you need.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with IT departments. But like, I come from Pakistan. What is another one you can think of that like fits the company building? I guess, advice on in 0 to 1?
I think I don't remember if this was like an explicit point in the book, but having conviction and not listening to the noise is one that's very important and has helped us a lot. Again, when we got started, everyone in the industry thought that what we were doing wouldn't work or couldn't work or wasn't legal. And it's because, I guess the principle is then think from a first principles perspective would be the 0 to 1-ism, because no one had really taken a close look at why does the industry operate this way, what's wrong with it, and how could it be built in a different way if you were to build something that you actually want instead of something that you're forced to have.
This is like a full circle. We started our conversation around how do you build conviction, and I wanted to go deeper on it. So, like expand on that a little. How do you form a thesis, and then how do you build conviction around that thesis?
I don't have a great broad playbook. A lot of it for me is intuition, which I actually think is valid. It's learned experience and lived experience over time that your brain processes as data, but it's harder to articulate sometimes. A lot of it is knowing what's possible in other industries that people who are in a particular industry don't know, and then taking those lessons. That's one of the reasons why we talked about founder market fit stuff.
Right.
That's one of the reasons I think it is very valuable to not come from a particular industry, because you don't have the jaded biases that everyone else in the industry has. A very simple example is when we started working or trying to work with health systems, everyone who works in healthcare told us it would be an 18 to 24 month sales cycle to get a health system to work with us. I think we got our first health system in 3 months. And it's because we just didn't accept that it was going to take us 2 years to do. We said, okay, how can we do this in 3 months? And let's just relentlessly pursue that. If we learned that we're wrong, fine. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe it's going to take us 2 years, and we'll decide if we think that's a good use of time or not. But we weren't wrong. Right. And so I think a lot of it is just like questioning assumptions and then trying it and then learning for yourself whether you're right or wrong.
That's a very fair answer. And okay, so one was around building your brand.
Okay, what about it?
It was around branding. I think there was like monopoly characteristics. Like there's some combination of proprietary technology, which is like how are you doing something that's 10x better. Network effects, which you're, I guess, becoming very good at. I can see. Economies of scale and branding. Those are the 4 pillars.
Got it. Branding is something we've dramatically underinvested in. We are only starting to think about the company's brand really the past few months.
What does that mean now for you guys?
It means, how do people think about us? How do people talk about us? What is the feeling people have when they think about Chapter? Today, people, our members think about us very much as we're their Medicare guidance platform, which is great, because that's what we do today. But we need to expand people's understanding of us from just a Medicare company to a retirement company. I think where are seniors hanging out? On the golf course, Facebook? They're definitely not on TikTok. They're on Facebook. They're on YouTube. Heavily on YouTube.
YouTube, oh, okay.
Yeah, YouTube is so big.
YouTube TV?
YouTube TV, just a lot of YouTube shows.
Right.
Like a lot of influencers.
Is it WhatsApp?
Seniors are on WhatsApp a lot.
WhatsApp groups.
I don't know the statistics on this. I think America's seniors are not as heavily on WhatsApp. I think a lot of
worldwide,
globally, but immigrant communities in the U.S.
Yeah.
are on WhatsApp, so they can talk to their friends and family abroad.
Right.
But I think America's seniors are not as heavily on WhatsApp.
Facebook and YouTube.
Facebook and YouTube are huge. And then people hang out in their local communities. Libraries are surprisingly large.
Are you going to start doing a library tour?
Probably not.
National?
That is how we got some of our very first users, though. We would just go to libraries and talk to people.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And religious organizations. Religious organizations are very much making a comeback in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And seniors tend to be more religious than younger individuals.
Yeah. What's that? I think there's a joke back home that at 55 you find religion again. Yeah. Somewhere around that age.
Yeah.
So Oh, interesting. So, you think digital channels are still like the most scalable for a brand, or do you have to create some sort of grassroots level thing that nobody else is doing?
It's a good question.
Because the competition for attention, even like on YouTube, with it's because you're not competing for healthcare content with
Yep.
you're competing against all content on YouTube, and like I have a hard time reconciling like that these digital channels are increasingly hard to penetrate.
Yeah. I mean, to your point on network effects, referrals are huge for us. Referrals are actually our number one enrollment source.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
that goes to having a great product that people
Right.
want to refer to people, to their friends. So I think digital channels actually do work well. We do some direct mail,
Right.
and it works,
Okay.
especially for our audience. We do. I mean, seniors are also on radio a lot. Listen to radio more than anyone else.
Radio?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
interesting.
watch TV, like linear TV, in a way that
Right.
you and I probably don't. So I think there are ways to access seniors that do work, but really it's a question. I actually don't think the medium is the most important thing anymore. It's actually the trust level. So if I go through, one of our partners is Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's one of the largest radio hosts in the country,
Okay.
and has a massive following and almost
I might know more podcasters than radios.
yeah, he has a podcast too. He does everything. Or Don Lemon, as an
Yeah,
example.
right. Okay. Yeah.
People really trust them. But
Right,
whether
they've been
they're
around
watching
for a
them
while, yeah,
on
yeah.
YouTube or listening to them on radio or seeing them on TV or getting a Facebook ad from them, it matters, but it matters less than the trust level between the audience and the actual principal.
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So there is like a different way to get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll. I like to, as we go towards the end, I like to ask if you've had any mentors in your life. I ask every guest, and what you learned from them.
Yeah. I've had a number of really helpful mentors in my life. One was certainly Vivek has been a close mentor of mine. Another individual named Naveen, who was my first boss at a tech startup in SF. When it was a company called Quickie, which was AI before AI.
Right.
They won TechCrunch Disrupt. It was peak of Silicon Valley ridiculousness.
Nice.
They had these ridiculous parties. It was exactly what you'd expect when you think of the epitome of Silicon Valley.
The show.
Yes, I mean some of the show was actually based on that company. It was so absurd, and but he taught me so much about how to operate and how to think about building a business. And my dad is a close mentor of mine. He started a family business, or he continued the family business, and I talked to him a lot about building businesses, dealing with people. He definitely has more of an older school approach to building businesses, so it's helpful to have kind of the almost counter.
Oh yeah.
Like contrary. What's today?
Right.
Someone who says some of these things. It's actually quite contrarian today to think about these concepts of personal relationships actually matter in business.
Yeah.
That's not the most common view.
But he's probably right.
He's 100%
He's
right.
100%
in
right.
some
Yeah,
contexts,
yeah,
at least,
yeah.
he's 100% right.
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of very great mentors that I'm fortunate to have.
What kind of business did your dad start?
Well, my dad's dad started the business. It was a brush manufacturing company. So toothbrushes, mops,
Oh, wow.
cleaning brushes. Yeah, I could have been the
You could have been the third person in the
I could have
lineage.
been the brush guy. Yeah, here we are.
Do you think that's where you got your entrepreneurial DNA, or?
I don't. I mean, that certainly probably contributed to it, but
Right.
I actually think it's like it's a personality deficit I have, which is that I really don't do well with authority. I think that's the number one thing that made me well equipped to be an entrepreneur, which is I just don't fit well in most organizations, and so kind of my only choice. Palantir was very good in that they were very good at absorbing people like that.
Integrating misfits.
Yes,
so
integrating misfits, exactly.
yeah.
But most companies are not. And yeah, so there just weren't that many places to go.
Was your dad disappointed you're not going to continue running the brush business?
No, he actually got out of the business a long time ago as well. So
okay.
I think he knew from an early age that I probably wasn't going to be
What,
in the business.
what's some of the contrarian, most, I guess, now contrarian advice you've gotten from your dad recently that you've practiced?
He always reminds me that it's hard for the principal, the CEO, to realize exactly how the team perceives the principal, and small things go a long way. My dad, I mean, he ran a brush manufacturing company. It was like a big factory.
Right.
And so every year during Christmas, he would personally give out cards and shake everyone in the company's hands. And it was hundreds of people. It wasn't like a few people. And so just the personal touch of everyone, even though he was the CEO, mattered a lot to people. It allowed them to prevent being like they were not unionized, which was a huge win for especially at that time.
Right.
And some of those lessons of just thinking about how do people perceive me and others and the company, I think about a lot.
Perception is reality is something my mentor taught me.
Yeah.
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 What is something you learned from Vivek that?
Be as as you can be. There's no such thing as being too ambitious.
No ceiling on ambition.
There's no ceiling in ambition. The more ambitious you are, the better. And people need to hear the same thing over and over for it to stick.
Yeah. As principle, repetition.
Yes.
Is everything.
Repetition is very important, and keeping things understandable.
Yeah. And from Naveen?
Naveen, I probably learned a lot more tactical things about, I mean, he worked in finance and private equity and in banking for a long time. So I learned a lot of the skills that from him that I didn't get by foregoing iBanking or consulting. So I never felt the deficit of that. Like I could model in Excel with the best of them after working with him. I could create a business plan with the best of them after working with him in a very small time. And also just being in a tech, it was my first time in a real software company technology environment and thinking about seeing how he and others think about value creation was very helpful.
For a super early stage company, what's a business plan meant to convey?
I actually think business plans are kind of dumb. I wouldn't create a business plan if I were starting a company.
Because it changes.
I still don't like...
And you don't hit like any of those.
I mean, anytime someone asks me for feedback on a fundraising deck, usually people have like 24 or 36 months of financial projections. And my first piece of guidance is just take it out.
Yeah.
Like you don't know where your company's going to be in 3 years. Don't pretend. You just lose credibility.
Yeah.
Even today, I mean, we're a pretty scaled company, but the world changes so quickly. It's like... I don't even like projecting a year out. My point is like, we're going to grow as much as we possibly can with the highest quality service we possibly can. And it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be, this or this, I don't know exactly. I'm going to try and make it this.
Yeah. The truth is we don't know.
The truth is we don't know.
Yeah.
I'm pushing as hard as I possibly can. I'm working as hard as I possibly can. So like, we're not a public company. Does it really matter?
Right. But I'm sure you still like you're a growth stage company now. You've been operating for almost 6 years. I'm sure you get investors, and now I guess you can do projections.
Yeah, I still push back on it though.
You do? Like
absolutely.
A lot of investors growth stage want to see projections. Like they're who I'm talking. This is like a profile.
But I think you can credibly say like, look at our history.
Yeah.
We have consistently done very well.
Yeah.
Here are the reasons why we're going to continue to do very well and accelerate in some cases.
Right.
And we can build projections if you want. We don't know if they're going to be right, but we're happy to put it together if that's helpful. Yeah. But let's not pretend that we can see the future. And that's usually the conversation I have with investors. And it actually builds a lot of credibility because they're just used to people making up a lot of bullshit.
Yeah, that's fair. I hope like people take this and go back and actually push back because the most absurd thing I've seen is financial projections in pre-seed seed stage. Like,
Oh, it's
companies.
so ridiculous.
It's just ridiculous.
I think it's helpful and important for a seed stage company to go through the exercise of understanding the unit economics of their business and how it can work at scale.
Right.
I think that's very important. It's a good exercise, and
For
it's
themselves.
for themselves,
Yeah.
and so that the investors can understand like what this business can look like at scale.
Or can this person think in that?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
it's
in
good
that
signal
way,
both
yeah.
ways, and I think that's very important. But to tie that to here's where we're going to be in 9 months, here's where we're going to be in 18 months,
Right.
I think is just absurd.
Yeah. It's just that's more like the planning part that can you think through these things, and of course they'll change rather than that makes sense. This looks spiky. This is great.
Yeah.
We feel good about ourselves. Yeah, that's funny.
And one thing to remember, some of the most successful companies
Yeah.
have had pretty significant down rounds.
Oh yeah.
Stripe, DoorDash. DoorDash had a down round Series B.
Yes, tried very recently. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies. And it doesn't mean they're not going to be amazing and are amazing companies and not going to be continue to be very successful.
Yeah.
But just context changes.
Yeah. Some people are wired differently. You have Elon kind of operators who can manage or like run multiple businesses, and there are other serial entrepreneurs as well. I guess Jack Dorsey did it, right? He started 2-3 businesses. I mean, you could argue how well like they do at both businesses if they're running like 2 or 3, right?
Sure.
But do you are there other problem areas you want to be able to go after? Let me put it that way.
I mean, I'm very focused on chapter today, but there are problems in the world I think about and have thought about. One is certainly our climate, our environment. I'm not just saying this, like almost on a weekly basis, when I walk outside and I breathe, I'm like, oh man, I'm worried that my kids might not be able to breathe the air in 20 years. It like actually does affect me. I don't know how to solve it. I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that's a very important thing that we as a world on Earth will have to start to figure out in a real way over the next decade. I think our legal industry is fucked. I think our legal industry, laws matter a lot in this country and in a lot of the world. And the way that law firms operate, I think is totally ass backward. They're wildly inefficient. Their incentives are just to increase billable hours. And I think they're really dumb.
Yeah.
And not that the lawyers are dumb. The lawyers are very smart usually. But the way that they operate is very dumb. And I think there's a massive opportunity to create a big law competitor
Tech
that
service
actually
enabled.
Yeah, a tech-enabled services, big law company that actually uses good technology, good AI with the best people, I think can outcompete a Kirkland.
I think there are a lot of companies going after that. So it's going to get
Like what? I haven't heard of one.
This is going to become a competitive
I've
space.
heard of a lot of legal tech companies, but no one going after upmarket. Everyone's going after like repeatable contracts or NDAs or like startups. Like no one's going after big law that I've seen at least.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair. Nobody's going after big law.
Because they're afraid. Because it's scary. And it's hard.
Yeah. It's extremely hard. That's fair. The third problem here?
This is a problem that I don't know how to solve, but I think the way that the government buys technology is still backward. I think the Department of Defense, or now Department of War, has actually had a cultural revolution of sorts over the past decade to become much better at it, much more efficient. Not that it's good, but it's way better than it used to be.
Right.
But the rest of the government has not had this renaissance, so to speak. Like we're still relying on really shitty legacy contractors, the Accentures, the Booz Allens, who are just butts in seats. We're still relying on really bad software, COBOL, in a lot of cases. We still don't have the right incentives to encourage private companies to build good product and maintain it at a low cost for the government and for taxpayers. I think these are all very solvable. Just no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
Like no one at the right level. And it does kind of take the White House to do this, to like really prioritize this.
Right.
And continue to prioritize it for it to be fixed.
But that's the agenda they went in with, at least.
Not in part, but not really.
In part, yeah.
Doge had a mandate of certainly cost cutting.
Yeah.
And part of that was use good technology.
Right.
But really the past 6 months, a lot of the focus has been on broad government efficiency.
Right. And our friends in tech are not in every department, so.
They're not in every department, and they're not empowered in every department.
Right,
Even
that's
when they
fair.
are there,
Right.
there's still so much behind the scenes politics, so much behind the scenes bureaucracy.
I've heard, yeah.
In some
yeah.
in some parts of the government, you still have Obama era USDS people making all the decisions,
Yeah.
which to me is like the most ridiculous thing, given how much
Oh,
how much
yeah.
of the current White House's strategy is don't do that. They're still doing exactly that.
Right. The bureaucracy runs deep.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just saying, as you're saying this, I'm recalling stories. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. So so I mean, I think what the current administration is trying to do on the tech side is the right broad goal, but I don't think they've put enough.
Implementation wise, it just needs way more.
Yeah, I don't think
Horsepower.
people understand how much
Right.
how many roadblocks there are and how much political will it requires to
Right.
do it. I think it would take the president or the vice president making it a key part of their
Right.
platform, and I think it's hard.
But in the like the list of like
Yeah, like why is
everything
this a top
else,
3 priority?
yeah.
Right, and so that's why I think it never gets fixed. The other one that I think is another big issue in the government, which relates is it's like the unsexiest thing. It's HR. Like we don't have a good way to hire the best people. It's hard to fire people. We can't pay people whatever it takes to hire them because of regulation and legislation. For some for good reason, right?
Right.
And the performance orientation, again, sometimes for good reason, is not there. And I think it makes, like, in some parts of the world, it is very prestigious to work in the government.
Yeah.
It's not really here. There are some positions that are very prestigious, certainly, but by and large, being a bureaucrat is not considered a good title here.
Right,
It's like, it's a very negative title.
Oh yeah.
In some countries, a bureaucrat is a very positive title.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they do good work.
True, but but I think it's a necessary precedent culturally to attract
Right. It
good
should
people.
be at least extremely competitive process
Yes.
is what you're referring to. Yeah.
I think people have to want, good people have to
Right.
want to go into it,
Right.
at least. Are they doing good work once they're there? TBD.
Yeah.
But like, if you don't have good people who want to go there, you're not going to get to the second
So
part.
I can share an example in Pakistan. A lot of the top people in any given class would want to become bureaucrats.
Yeah.
In the as white collar workers, obviously. Which is a very, very competitive process to get in. But
That's fantastic.
But that's the extent of it. Nothing really changes.
Well,
that doesn't change.
Again, it's necessary but insufficient.
It's insufficient by miles. It doesn't really do anything.
I'd hope and argue that the U.S. government is better at many things than the Pakistani government.
Exactly. So like I would say that I guess not having the competitive process hasn't really impacted.
Yeah, we could be a lot better
Yeah.
and more efficient.
Right. Of course, there are also 2 million people, so it's hard to maneuver like these, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to change a big ship.
It's hard to change.
Yeah.
All these things. What's a book you read recently that changed your mind on something?
I've been trying to read a lot more fiction because I think it just helps me process information more and it's more enjoyable sometimes. There's this really weird book that I read recently called Unsong. It was self-published, which is never a good sign, but it's hard to describe. It's about a world where when we went to the moon in 1969, we broke the glass between Earth and heaven. And so it is now just an accepted fact that God and angels and deities exist. And there's a UN organization that is in charge of controlling and monetizing the names of God, which is an Old Testament, largely comes from Judaism. There are lots of names of God, and they each have different meaning and different power. And it almost has like a Harry Potter, like if you know a name of God, you can use it, and it has a particular, like you can teleport, or you can disappear, or you can be unbounded. And it's a fun fiction book.
Right.
Some of it is very well written, some of it is less well written, but it did have an interesting correlation to the resurgence of religion and tradition in some ways that we're seeing right now. And it did.
In what ways?
Just in that, I think Peter's essays or whatever it was, seminars on the Antichrist is a great example where
I went to.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't. So yeah, I would love to hear more about it.
We can talk about it offline.
But I think people are just using language today that would have been considered pretty out there a decade ago or even 5 years ago to use around Antichrist, around
Right.
God,
Forbidden.
around angels, forbidden, and just much more Old Testament language. And in this book, it was just part of normal everyday life. And so it was like, and I don't know, I think this book was published 10 or 15 years ago. Like, it's not that new a book.
It's very recent.
I mean, it's recent-ish, but it's not
Yeah.
like it came up with the current
Right.
post-COVID
Right.
religious resurgence. So yeah, it was just interesting.
I
to
gotta
think
get
about.
to know this guy.
Yeah, he's a psychiatrist or psychologist based in Berkeley.
Oh, so he's in my neighborhood.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, you
perfect.
could reach out to him.
It's fascinating. I'm sure you don't get a lot of time for like shows or movies, but like, what's your favorite all-time maybe movie or TV show?
All-time movie or TV show? It's so hard.
Well, we can do 1, 2, 3. It's okay.
I love Inglourious Bastards. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I'm not. No.
It's a movie about Jews killing Nazis, and what's there not to love about that?
Okay.
So that's, and it's very well done.
Right.
It's a good one. I don't love it anymore. I think I've outgrown it, but I used to love Zoolander. Used to absolutely love it.
Number 2. Okay.
TV shows. I really like this show called The OA. It's kind of like a cult niche show.
What network is it on?
I think it was on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Pretty sure. There's 2 seasons. I wish there were more.
The OA.
It's like a
okay.
multi-dimension.
Okay. I don't know if you
Sci-fi.
can tell. I'm not a movies person. I'm more of a show person. I don't like when things end.
What's your favorite show?
I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I think recently the Foundation series, but Apple TV's done a really good job. The Foundation, I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
Is pretty incredible production.
Yeah.
It was great. Story, everything.
fun.
It was really fun. The other one, Dark Matter,
The book?
the show.
There's a show? It was a book, right?
Yeah,
I read the book.
There's a show.
I didn't know there's a show.
Apple
Okay.
TV.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Incredible.
Okay.
Yeah. So just like, and then my mind like starts thinking, okay, so what would need to happen for parallel universes to exist or like to be?
Yeah.
So, how far are we from that? And then I'm reminded of the Peter aphorism. Then I look back the last like 40, 50 years, and I'm like, oh my god,
Pretty far.
We're still pretty far. We're still trying to get the self-driving cars,
Yeah.
mass adoption. So we're a little bit far. With that, we'll wrap up with any advice to people who are thinking about choosing problems to work on.
I think you really have to care about it is the number one piece of advice. Building enduring companies takes a long time, and you really have to care about what you're doing, or you really have to learn to love it, because times will be hard. And if you don't, then it'll just be too easy to quit.
Well, Cobi, thanks so much for coming on the show. I think I had like at least like 5, 6 other things we could have gone deeper on, but I think we'll definitely have you on for round 2. It'll be
Thanks
fun.
for having me. This was fun.